Hello and welcome to the Justice and Coffee podcast. My name is Bryn Frere-Smith and this week I've got Julia Immonen on the show. Julia is the head of partnerships at the anti-trafficking organisation Justice and Care. She spent 12 years of her career working for Sky Sports TV. And back in 2012 she climbed into a boat with 4 other ladies and rowed across the Atlantic Ocean, breaking 2 world records in the process. Julia is a friend, she is a firecracker, she was the first person I thought about getting on the show, and I'm excited for you to find out more about her. So here she is in episode 1 of the Justice and Coffee podcast. Julia!
Bryn!
How are you?
I am so well. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you. Today is our very first podcast. You're aware of that, right?
I am. I'm so excited. I'm very honoured.
You should be.
Thank you.
I think. But my mind went straight to you and I thought, okay, let's do this. Let's make a podcast, right? Everyone's making a podcast. Why can't we do that, right?
Yes.
My first thoughts were, who am I going to bring on the maiden voyage? I make that nautical reference.
Well done.
For a reason.
Ba-bum.
That will come up later. And of course, I thought of you, and you're looking particularly brown and radiant and lovely.
I didn't row back from Spain, I have to say. I safely got a plane, but yes, hot off the plane from Spain.
So you've been in Spain. How long were you away for?
Just for a week. It was just glorious. We all live such busy lives, so it was gorgeous just to go and catch some rays. And actually, I was very healthy. Didn't have a dessert.
What?
I ran every morning.
What?
Yes. Healthy girl over here.
You ran this morning as well.
I did too.
I hate sitting next to people like you. I feel so awful.
When are you throwing up at 2:30 in the morning?
Throwing up is 50% of what I was doing at 2:30 in the. Oh yeah, both.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Both ends, people. Don't tune out now.
But I'm glad that you brought that up because obviously I preferred to keep that between us. But now we can share it with the listeners. Yeah, it was one of those awful moments where you start having like a slightly uncomfortable dream, you know, and you're like,
this going, people? This
is weird. And then you sort of come round from your dream and like a bead of sweat forms at the top of your forehead and you start wriggling around in your bed and you think, oh no, I think I need to go to the toilet. And there's that shelf in your belly, which is like piled up with books. And then suddenly the shelf collapses and you're like, I've got to go now. It was one of those. Yeah, that doesn't. I mean, I hope
people stay tuning in now. We're sort of diving into all this stuff.
Yeah, fast forward to episode 3 or 4, and we won't be talking about such childish things. But you know I'm feeling like I'm still sort of recovering. I don't suffer from that very often, especially when I'm in the country. But what was that about? I went out for dinner last night and I had a fiery zinger chicken burger style thing.
There you go.
I think that might be the culprit.
I had sort of spicy jalapenos on holiday and I kind of knew about it the next
Did that affect you as well?
Look, we're going to go into details of some stuff today.
Let's be real. Let's be real with each other. I read your book.
Yeah.
And you were very real in that as well. Yeah. There were many references to the sort of
bucket
thing.
And jacket and food and throwing up.
All of that stuff was in there.
So look, this is how it is.
Come on,
But you know, we actually You messaged me a few times this week saying, you know, various funny sort of bits in the book or whatever. Yeah. And I just think, you know what, we impress with our strengths, but we connect through our vulnerabilities. And it's just so easy to sort of say the sort of good things, but it's the real stuff, isn't it, that connects with people.
I think so. Yeah. I think so. I always find that a far more attractive quality in someone that is humble and self-effacing than particularly, you know,
got it all together. Yeah, who likes those anyway?
Yeah,
you know.
I agree.
Life's not all what it looks like on Instagram, is it?
That is so profound. Julia, the podcast is called People Talking Justice Over Coffee. So I wanted to open up and just talk coffee with you for a second.
Awesome.
Well, we're in a coffee shop. Yeah. We're relaxed. We're catching up. We've got loads to talk about, apparently.
Yeah.
What can I get you? I'm going to go and get us a coffee. What's your order?
Okay. You're going to actually hate me. You know this already. But you know when people say, oh, tell us something we don't know about you, I always sort of say 2 things that have people in shock horror. One is that I don't wear deodorant. Never. I don't smell, people. Don't worry. I don't smell, do I?
Not from this distance.
Okay, good. Great. And then the other thing, which you're obviously not too impressed about, is that I've never had a cup of coffee in my whole life,
Ooh.
which is horrendous for the man who has founded a coffee company. But if I did drink coffee, Bryn, it would be Blue Bear coffee.
It would come with a Blue Bear label on it.
It's just, I must have a child's palate. I don't really drink wine. I'm just not good with coffee. I've had 3 sips, tried loads of sugar, loads of coffee, milk or frothy and all different stuff. But it just, the white stuff. Yeah. But it just doesn't do it for me. It's just too bitter. Yes. But if you were to order me a coffee, it would absolutely be Blue Bear.
Would it violently... I've sat in front of a cafetiere full of Brazilian Blue Bear coffee.
Why don't you pour it and I will have a sip?
Have a sip. I'll pour you a really
Because
tiny...
I'm passionate about justice.
Correct.
And I'm passionate about Blue Bear. And I'm passionate about freedom. I will take probably my 6th sip in my whole life. And this is black. It doesn't look too dark, actually.
I like it.
See, it smells gorgeous.
Yeah, of course.
But let me try it.
Of course. I think people are tempted sometimes to throw way too much milk into their coffee.
Can I tell you? Actually quite good.
Delicious, isn't it?
It's considering I mean it's just the after bitter taste, but I do actually
Yeah, well there are different types of coffee and you can get really fruity, really vibrant fruity ones that are almost like hot juices, you know?
I'm shocked. I think that's quite light. It's not too heavy.
Oh wow, you're immediately
and I love the Blue Bear coffee keep cup.
Yeah,
love that.
Yeah, have you not got one yet?
No, I'll nick this one.
Yeah, it's well about time you did. Julia, I want to find out in the next 30 odd minutes a little bit about you.
Yeah.
And your journey to getting where you are now, why we're in a recording studio in central London talking about the issues of justice and how they're attached to your life. So tell me now, what's your life? What's your job and how do you pursue that issue of justice in your everyday life?
Yeah. I mean, rewinding back, probably like 12, 13 years ago, I'm ashamed to say I lived very much for me, myself and I. I was the girl who cared more about shoes and handbags, frankly, than I did about charity or making the world a better place or helping other people's lives, let alone, helping slaves become free. And then I, one day, just went to the cinema one Saturday night, went to watch this film, Taken. Everyone knows that I hate scary movies, jumpy movies, don't even bother inviting me. And I kind of went not quite knowing what I was going to watch. And lo and behold, I sat there in horror as I watched Liam Neeson's daughter taken and sold into sex slavery. Yeah. I sat there in horror. My jaw was on the floor and I just walked out of there disturbed, just thought that's a Hollywood horror sort of awful film, was disturbed for a few weeks, but just got on with sort of life as normal. And then a few months later, I was at a conference and heard this whole presentation all about human trafficking and realised that, wow, everything in that film was true and worse. And at that time, they estimated there was 27 million people in slavery. And actually today, the more accurate figure is 40 million. Yeah. And I just thought, but what on earth does little old me, little girl from sunny Slough do to make a difference to this overwhelmingly huge injustice? And I guess I looked at what was in my hand. What are my skills? What are my talents? What are my areas of influence? I worked at Sky Sports News for 12 years. Sport was a big part of my world, but by no means am I some professional athlete. And then an initial half marathon with a long story in the middle turned into sort of really researching, becoming so passionate about this injustice, networking with sort of NGOs, finding out from local police what was going on. And I wasn't just moved, but I was moved to action. And that turned into a little row across the Atlantic.
A little row across the Atlantic. Amazing. Yeah, I like the way you just struck that in at the end, as if it was a small thing. I wanna talk about that row, obviously, because it's absolutely extraordinary. But I kind of just want to pull you a little bit further back, if that's okay. So I did my homework. Now, I have always been a last-minute sort of guy.
Same.
Like, I still have those stress streams that are based on real experiences of like waking up the morning of an exam and just cramming like the last bits of info. Maybe if I write it all down, it will be the same as what would happen if I've been studying it for the last 6 months. That's me. But on this occasion, and in your case, I have done a bit of research. So I read your book cover to cover,
Wow.
which I very much enjoyed, and I brought it in so you can sign it and write nice dedication to me.
I will.
I listened to podcasts in which you've spoken on, and just really sort of done a bit of an open source stalkery search on you.
Gosh,
yeah,
this is scary.
and I just think your story is quite remarkable beyond just the fact that you weren't an athlete, and as you've declared, and you did this rather remarkable feat of rowing across the Atlantic Ocean with a group of 4 other women.
Yeah.
I kind of think, but for someone else, they might think, okay, this is a middle-class woman that has a great network of individuals, and she's connected and she's a socialite and she has these things that she can do that, right? That's for her. But actually, what I loved about reading your book, because we've known each other about best part of a year maybe now, I didn't know some of the stories you're very honest and vulnerable about in your story, in your book, about your childhood growing up in Finland and just the personal issues you've experienced. And do you think that some of those things might have informed where you are now in more a direct way than just having seen that movie?
Yeah, I think you're really right, actually, Bryn. I remember actually trying to get this row off the ground, and there was this lady who had rowed the Atlantic a couple of times, actually, and she just kept believing in me and kept sort of cheering me on because there were just so many setbacks and challenges. And I remember when I sent her the manuscript, actually, to Row for Freedom, my book, and she said to me, Julia, I thought you were this sort of well-to-do girl from Chelsea. Like, I just didn't realise, and that your background was so sort of messed up, I suppose. And actually, do you know, I really unashamedly, Bryn, I didn't come from a perfect sort of background. My dad was a pastor, actually, of a church in Finland. We grew up in Lapland, just up the road from Santa Claus, which was an amazing place to grow up. But it was actually there that my mum had my sister and I actually really quite struggled for money financially there. I don't really remember those days, but there was a lot of violence from my dad towards my mum. And then actually when we moved to the UK when I was about 6.5, and my sister a couple of years older, that's more when I started to become aware of just the dysfunction, I suppose, of our family. My dad, bless him, he even says, Mum and Dad are still together, but Dad says, Julia, I just never quite got to grips with life in the UK. I mean, my dad was even in an orphanage, 0 to 2, never knew his father. So I know the background of where a lot of his stuff comes from, but ultimately it's not right that there's violence. And I thought domestic violence was kind of what happened to other people but that was our reality. And I remember, sometimes running to the phone box and calling the police. And I guess as a result of my dad not working and my mum really holding the fort and providing, being the sort of the mum, the dad, the breadwinner, the everything, the pressure of that was so big. And then I remember actually, that would have been 8-9 years ago when I was sort of stepping out to sort of in my naivety to say, I'm rowing the Atlantic. The very week my mum was suicidal, just that her business sort of failed and wasn't doing very well, and the pressure of money was so tough. And actually she was sectioned and in a psychiatric ward. And so I speak very vulnerably in the book. And I often say, we impress with our strengths, but we connect through our vulnerabilities. But actually with all sort of public victories, there's always private battles. And the battles were massive. People see the sort of the glory of the row and these world records and, championing freedom. But actually it was horrendous. I remember going to work at 4 a.m. At Sky, sitting in a psychiatric ward all afternoon, looking after my mum, then leading this sort of crew of girls. No idea, complete rookie, didn't know how to lead a team, didn't know how to row, didn't know how to fundraise, didn't know anything. But the passion for this injustice was so great that I suppose some of that childhood, some of that violence, some of that injustice in my family really propelled me into this journey of freedom that I've been on. So I certainly don't have it all together. I love to tell people that I don't have it all together, because who does? Right. And we're all works in progress. And I just love that we can grow, we can learn from our experiences, and you just find this fortitude, you find this resilience. And actually, I think sitting there in a psychiatric ward with my mum for the months leading up to the row prepared me for what came next on the ocean, and actually made me stronger for it. And it is the tough stuff. It is only going through those insurmountable waves of life that we find our true character. The ego gets stripped away. The the rough edges that we all have get stripped away. And I love that. And I don't want the easy sort of wide open space. I want that narrow road, the tough road. And I say that, with trepidation, actually, because I know that sort of narrow road is the harder road. But I want that sort of the tough stuff, weirdly, because I know that's where the good stuff is formed in us.
Yeah. I think one of the things I wanted to talk about with this series of podcasts in terms of justice is not just exclusively the issues of modern day slavery and human trafficking, but try and just broaden our perspective of what we associate with justice. And I know there's a lot of, there's been a lot more media sort of turn its attention to these issues, like certainly on Netflix and television shows that they've talked about previous historical cases of injustice where someone, I'm thinking of things like the guys in the park, the Now They See Us show about these chaps that were unlawfully detained for up to like 15 years.
Wow.
Really terrible investigation took place in New York back in the 80s and 90s, and then like Making a Murderer more recently. And Serial is a podcast, obviously, that sort of engaged a lot of people, but it was potentially the question of a story of wrongful conviction. And I think I agree that issues of injustice, so when something just isn't right, like you talked about the violence that you experienced as a child, when you sort of see something and you go, that's not okay. That there's something about that I'm really uncomfortable with, and there's a fear attached to it. But I think it's just that clarity of right and wrong, and sadly there are many people that see wrong so often that wrong becomes normal. But I just wondered when I was reading this, I thought, okay, it wasn't something that started 10 years ago for this woman. If that's my interpretation, whether that's right or not, actually,
it is.
She experienced that, and it wasn't just in your childhood, right? So you had not the best experience in some relationships.
Exactly. Yeah, that just sort of, as you were speaking, I thought, gosh, we become the cycle of what we know. And so that violence, that dysfunction was all that I knew, that was comfortable. So rather than picking a good, kind, steady, man or relationship, I picked these, real sort of bad boys. And actually the second one was violent. It was terrible. And I remember actually we moved after I was at university in Sheffield, moved near my mum and dad, and I remember sometimes running home at like 2 a.m. with slap marks around my face because of the violence, and it was just terrible. So you're really right, Bryn. I don't think I've pondered that massively, that sort of connection actually with justice, but you've hit the nail on the head there. It really did stem, that's probably why this fire has burned up in me, because all of that happened to me in those years. And I just think for all of us, we all, we of course want our children to have safe environments to grow up in, but the fact is that so many do grow up in unjust homes or fatherless. This is a fatherless generation. I remember when those Manchester riots, and I remember saying it happened, and looting and everything broke out, and I remember saying actually to one of the vicars in my church, and I said to him, what was that all about? And he was actually, it's a fatherless generation. And I just thought that's so true, like broken homes, like it all stems to so much of the injustice in the world today.
I completely agree. You mentioned picking bad boys.
Oh yeah.
What is that about? As a 33-year-old guy, I do have to question, like, why? I don't think guys, and this might be a massively like sweeping generalization, but I don't think in so many cases guys pick bad girls. Maybe I'm wrong. There could be lots of people thinking, well, yeah, I don't agree with that one. But I don't think I go, oh yeah, she looks like a criminal. She looks like she's going to give me a hard time.
Yeah, like why is it that it's almost glamorized? And actually, you know, some of our workers, some of our victim navigators at Justice and Care actually don't like the sort of portrayal of, say, Taken. It almost sort of glamorizes the sex industry. And, you know, I actually don't think that, when the reality is that these are some of the most vulnerable people in when we talk about slavery, these are some of the most vulnerable people. They're not often these beautiful model-esque girls. They're actually very ordinary, very vulnerable, maybe not that beautiful actually, who are exploited from one hellish situation to another. But I think, you know, going back to the bad boy or bad girl, you know, people, you know, that often stems from a childhood of abuse or there's always some link, you know. For me, it was just not having that steady father, which is why I picked, you know, unsteady relationships. But when you become aware of it, I spent 2 years in therapy working out why I picked these bad guys. But I'm glad to say I've picked a good, kind man. Good. Now.
This is great news.
He is a good man. So there we go.
There are a few of them out there.
There are good, and there are good women out there too for you, Bryn.
Absolutely.
He is single, ladies, so yes.
Let's not talk about
I'll bet them. I'll bet
romantic life. I want to know about Sky. So I'm going to presume that virtually everyone listening to this has heard of Sky or Sky
I
Sports.
hope so.
But if they're not, you know, if they grew up in another country, talk to me about what's Sky and what did you do there?
Yeah, so Sky Sports, well, my first boyfriend played football professionally, so I sat there in the stands for many years. Don't call me a wag. I can see that's on the tip of your tongue. But and really because of him, I just fell in love with the beautiful game. I love football. I'm an Arsenal fan. You're a Tottenham fan, aren't you? Who do you...
I can't call myself a fan. When my dad and my brother was Spurs crazy, and I just sort of go along with it. But
sorry, North London rivals.
No, it just doesn't really get me excited anymore.
Oh
Lots
you prefer more like boxing and martial arts and different sports.
I'm a really selfish person. You know, I'm so focused on my own life that I don't really give a huge amount of attention to other things like sport or following anybody in that way, like bands or.
Yeah, but you do a lot for this world, so I'm not going to have you let you put yourself down that much. Kind. Actually, Bryn.
I can't call myself a Spurs fan. Too many people who know me.
Okay, good. Well, we could continue to be friends then. But I am an Arsenal fan.
Right. And they are the baddies, right?
We won at the weekend, so happy days. But yeah, so look, I just fell in love with sport. Football especially. I've always loved like athletics and grew up skiing. My dad's big Formula One guy, so grew up with sort of motorsport sport. But just fell in love with football, and that led to me doing a media with PR degree in Sheffield, and then that led to me working at Sky Sports News, and I was there for 12 and a half years, which is a long time these days. And I just left there about a year ago, and it was the most amazing time. I started there as a runner and worked on the production teams, then as an assistant director and various roles there. And I loved it. And it was one big sort of family, and it just didn't feel like work, rocking into work at 4 a.m. Yeah, that was tough actually. But that, I think, was great preparation for the row and what was to come. But just they saw this light bulb come on in me, just this passion ignite. This was the girl who was sort of at that time, at the beginning of my time at Sky, I was sort of living with my second boyfriend. And then when that all ended, life just sort of took on did a kind of 180, and I became so passionate about this, and actually came back to my faith, that childhood faith that I sort of abandoned. I came back to my faith, and I don't know, just the light bulb kind of came on in me, and then it just, they saw me unfold sort of this into this, you know, different person, and not different person, but I guess all that potential and all those sort of dreams that you hope to fulfill in your life. I just never quite dreamed that I could live this sort of extraordinary life or give some big dreams a go. And working at Sky Sports News, and then doing Row for Freedom, and sort of before that, just a half marathon, actually Run for Freedom, and off the back of that, using sport to bring freedom, they came on the adventure with me. So they've been a big part of my life and one big sort of family, really.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You were really helpful at the start of when we started Blue Bear. I was like, right, well, we're going to be an online, we're going to be an online coffee company.
Yeah.
Who can get us some like celebrity endorsement? And you were very kind to send out. We send out some stuff, didn't we? Some
Lots of.
to your
Do you know
pals.
when you tell people about women, men, and children being exploited? Nobody says no.
Right.
So everyone's like, of course we'll help you, Julia. What can we do?
Yeah.
You know, if it's use our social media, or one of my friends at church was like, oh, Matthew Pinson's my next door neighbour. Would that help you? Well, yeah, it would. So, and actually,
right?
You know, and our vicar was like, Julia, come and meet Bear Grylls after a service one day. Would that help? Yeah, it would. So actually, it's just amazing. People are so kind. And so when you walked into our offices at Justice and Care and I heard all about Blue Bear Coffee, I just loved your story. I think you're amazing and what you're doing is incredible. And so look, we it's just a joy to be a door opener for other people. So yeah. Anything we could do to help you, of course we will.
Well, I appreciate it. I think it's one of those things, isn't it? It's when the cause is bigger than the individual, you know,
totally.
Like we're just pawns, aren't we, playing along and trying to do our bit for something that's way bigger than us. I just want to pause the interview with Julia there to tell you a little bit about Blue Bear Coffee Company. We at Blue Bear have produced this show in order to highlight some of the amazing work that's being done by people around the world to make this planet a safer, fairer and more just place to live in. But our main job is selling coffee. We sell a variety of specialty coffees online and through our wholesale partners, and donate 100% of our net profits to organisations fighting human trafficking and caring for survivors, organisations such as Justice and Care. If you love coffee or justice, or ideally both, why not head across to our website at www.bluebearcoffee.com and order yourself something delicious. Now let's get back to Julia. You're finished. Well, you're finished with Sky now, but let's not quite finish with that part of your life. So let's talk about this flipping unbelievable thing you did. How long ago? 7-8 years ago now?
So that was it was 2011-12. So we left December 2011 and arrived January 21st, 2012.
Which is
like 7 years.
Ago this Christmas.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Right. Give it to me. You talked about going on a jog with your friend and having a conversation, doing a half marathon, but that's a hell of a jump to go from that to rowing the Atlantic
it started
Ocean.
with me just like giving to a charity, like probably my 15-20 quid a month, and doing this half marathon. And then Steph, my best friend, I moved from Costa del Slough to South Ken, and we
move.
Little upgrade. Went running one day, Steph and I, my best friend, and living together, and her ex-boyfriend had rowed the Atlantic, and I think it was a bit like we were both newly single. Julia, you know, he could row the Atlantic, so why don't we row the Atlantic? And that's how it started. And instantly I thought, wow, this is crazy, but what an extraordinary opportunity to retrace that transatlantic slave trade route and make a big noise about slavery. So that's how it all started. But Steph's father was just knew what went into this and just said, over my dead body, Steph, are you doing this? So she really begrudgingly had to pull out. But by that point, I was just hooked. I just thought, more people have gone to space or climbed Everest than have rowed the Atlantic. It's just crazy. And I remember going in to see our sort of CEO of Sky Sports and saying, Andy, I want to row the Atlantic. And he just sort of laughed in my face. And then he saw it all unfold. And actually, they were really supportive. And anyway, and then I put together, after Steph pulled out, then the race organisers said, look, we want to do this sort of record attempt with 6 girls, the fastest women to row the Atlantic. Why don't you be part of that? Which would have been in a few months' time. And then I went back to my boss and said, oh gosh, I don't want to row the Atlantic next year. I want to row in a few months. So he was like, oh my gosh, like, do you even know how to row yet? And I kind of did, but not quite, not at all well. And then anyway, that crew ended up falling apart. And actually I pulled out of that crew because my mum had this big mental breakdown. And I thought, how can I go and try and do my bit for the world when my mum needs me? So I pulled out, and then the race organisers said, look, it ended up all falling apart, that crew anyway. Why don't you go back to the original time, later on in the year? You've got nearly a year to put together your own whole Row for Freedom crew. And, sometimes when you can't work stuff out, I just feel like, everything's working together for the good behind the scenes, and it ended up being bigger and better than I could have, me being one of 6 girls. So all raising awareness about different things, it wouldn't have had that big an impact. So then I put together this Row for Freedom crew from all over the world. Only one of them, who was our skipper from America, had ocean or rowing experience. The other 5 of us, complete rookies. And, just to raise 130k to get to the start line, campaigning. We went to number 10 to meet David Cameron and, do as much press. For me, yes, that fundraising was important, but actually just telling the world about slavery. I remember going over to see my colleagues at Sky News saying, we need to, do stories about slavery. And they would look at me blankly like, what are you going on about? Like, slavery was abolished 200 years ago by Wilberforce. Like, what are you going on about? People just didn't know about it. And so it was really important for me to make a big noise, and great that, we were gunning for these world records and fundraising, but actually it was just wake up world. This is not okay. This is happening on our watch. It's flourishing. It's not in India and Southeast Asia. It's on our doorsteps. It's rife, and wake up. We need to do something about it. So it was an amazing experience just to get to the start line. I felt like, get me on the boat for a rest, because I'd gone through hell with the whole journey with mum and just the crew changes. And it was just like, get me on the boat for a rest. I'm exhausted. Got on the boat, no flipping rest. It was horrendous, Bryn. I mean, literally paralysing, fear-filled first couple of weeks, just 50-foot waves, 15-metre waves the size of houses. I can see them in my mind's eye now, just building up, thunderous, mountainous sort of esque waves, debilitating seasickness, just throwing up so much, but rowing 2 hours on, 2 hours off continuously for as long as it was going to take you. I mean, a head screw. We all hit the proverbial sort of brick wall, but when you've looked into the eyes of women, men and children who have been raped 20 times a night or working in hot brick kilns, and I met a girl who I talk about in the book called Alejandra, and it's just not okay that people are sold for sex, sold for other people's greed, for other people's benefit, forced criminality, organ harvesting, men in car washes, women in nail bars, young children in brothels. Not on my watch. So that the pain had purpose. And it was Alejandra, it was just this injustice. It was actually even just thinking of my mum and just what she had endured. And it made my pain pale into insignificance. And 3,000 miles was overwhelming, but you just break it down. Wow. If you're facing those insurmountable waves of life right now, whatever you might be going through, sometimes it's just hanging on for dear life for that hour or that day. And, I always say everyone's got an ocean to cross, and that might be that people are struggling with mental health and they need to just get out of bed and just going for a walk. That is their ocean today. So whatever it is, step by step and oar stroke by oar stroke, like we got there. And it's a marathon, not a sprint, and it just was a head screw, but just break it down step by step, stroke by stroke. And if you don't give up, you will get to the other side.
Flipping great. Yeah. Does your LinkedIn profile read motivational speaker? It should do.
I'm just so passionate. I sat there, helping these 2 other guys in their lives, helping champion their dreams. And that's great, but just didn't dream my own dreams. I'm too fed up of people having dreams, shoving them under the bed, collecting dust. Do you know what? Dare to get them out again, or dare to dream. And there is so much to change in this world, whether it's fighting slavery, whether it's fighting poverty, or, the elderly. My mum is so ill and riddled with Parkinson's, and she's who I took to Spain this last week just to give my dad a week's break. And it just made me think, God, respect for these people who are carers, and go and sit with elderly people and just chat about your life for an hour once a week with them. Just smile at people, be kind. I think this row gave me such perspective that don't sweat the small stuff, and love with abandon. Just cherish the people who you love, and there's always going to be tough times. There's always going to be annoying people in our lives, like 5 girls in a little boat. Oh, we sacked our skipper 2 days before race day, so 6 went to 5. Look, there's always challenges. And 5 girls, of course it could be, bitchy on the boat. But actually we were united for something bigger than ourselves. And actually, it's not uncommon that people walk off the boat and don't ever want to speak to each other again. Right. But we were united for this injustice. And there's always going to be tough situations. And we had many. We were plagued with problems. But it is just through the tough stuff that you find the gold, the pure gold.
I read about what happened on one of the first days. You lost your lights. Your battery.
Yeah, battery tester broke. The water maker blew up on day 14. I mean, Bryn, everything that could go wrong went wrong. Yeah. Everything that could break broke. One of the seats broke, so we had to sit on the broken seat, hand pumping water for a month. I mean, it was a joke. Yeah. But this is life, isn't it? But when you're on the ocean with no help, we didn't see another boat the whole way across. Lost a third of our food. It felt insurmountable. And I actually probably was the one who struggled the worst mentally. Yeah. And it was just that digging in, remembering why I started. And, I did this to help other people. But what it did in me was probably profoundly bigger, because I found somebody inside of me that I didn't know existed. There's more inside of all of us than we realise. And I don't want to live a comfortable life.
Yes.
I don't. No. And then it was like, after the road, Julia, what are you going to do next? Are you going to cycle around the world? And I did look at that. Are you going to climb Everest? I would love to. But actually, I don't feel like I know what goes into those. So it is tough. It's scary, actually, committing to do this big stuff, because I know that the naivety with the row was a good thing, because I didn't know what kind of went into it. I just went into it like a complete rookie. Yeah. But actually now I know the cost of doing big things to change the world. And actually, I feel like I'm now probably more effective. I left my job at Sky Sports, and then after a life-changing trip to India, seeing the work of justice and care, I've seen many people, many charities, all doing amazing things and all needed, but never have I seen such an end-to-end strategy and all-out assault to end slavery like justice and care. And I came back wrecked for 2 weeks. I cried for 2 weeks at the injustice of some people in India having such opulence, such wealth, and then on the other side, I can't even describe the poverty. It was just so gut-wrenching and heart-wrecking that I saw the quality of the work, and I came back so excited and said, sign me up, I want in. Yeah. And I feel like I'm amongst the world's leaders and thinkers in this field, and we are smashing this injustice, and there's a long way to go, but I feel like I'm just part of something so much bigger now by being part of this incredible team.
I love it. I love that when this massive experience in your life was over, that you associated with raising awareness for these issues. That wasn't like, okay, I'm done now.
No,
I've done my good thing.
Start. Yeah.
I'm going to go back. I'll have some nice photos up on the wall in my apartment, and that's, I've done my thing in life to contribute to this issue. I love that. It was almost an inescapable part of you that just grew so much so that you now work in it full time. So. Yeah. What do you do? How do you use your experiences with the Row and with Sky and with your network in the media world? And how do you employ that to in justice and care?
Yeah, I love that they came back. And I think I cried for 2 hours in my meeting with our chief exec and one of the other members of our team. And they said, this is the best meeting we've had. I think just seeing someone so affected by the work. And
when you came back from India?
Yeah, when I came back from India in 2017. And they said, Julia, and I said, look, I'm going to be straight up. I want in. I want to work for you. And they said, okay, Julia, pen your dream job. And I love people. I'm passionate about this injustice. I want to get other people excited about it. I want other people to look at what's in their hand. What can they do for freedom, whether it's running or cycling or using coffee or jewelry or fashion or music, or, some people don't have time, but they've got money, or vice versa. And It's just inspiring others to action. And so I'm head of partnerships. So whether that's engaging with corporates or churches or universities or schools, I love going into schools and, inspiring, I hope, younger people. They are the next generation of abolitionists, of change makers, of, leaders, and actually just inspiring them that, gosh, if this little chick from Slough with a pretty screwed up past can do this, then go and row the Pacific. Don't just stick with the Atlantic. Go and row your oceans of adventure and make a difference in the world, whether it's this or something else. So we are an incredible team. I love that our work is local and global. We're operational. We're in Bangladesh. We've been in India for the last 10 years. And I guess the unique thing for me was just seeing this charity or organisation. I feel like we've got the sort of heart of a charity, but the mind of a business. And, we are going after these criminal networks. So dismantling the criminal networks, always working with government and local law enforcement. We don't do this, no one NGO is ever going to, like a silver bullet, take out this injustice. It's serious organised crime at the end of the day. And so always working with government, local law enforcement to bring that a high level, big systemic change. And we're also right here in the UK. We're going to be operational in Romania this year. And so we've got these victim navigators, which is a completely sort of unique role. So we're embedded in the serious and organised crime units within the Surrey, Kent, Essex police. We've got all other forces sort of crying out for these roles, and we've got many more coming this year. And a child victim navigator, which I'm so excited about. So we help the police with tactical advice. I love that the other month our Surrey navigator trained the road traffic police in Surrey, and the very next day some of these officers were able to identify a suspicious vehicle, arrested 2 traffickers, freed 4 Eastern European women, right on our doorstep. And with the whole issue of county lines, which I know that you know about, and so many minors. So now we have a child victim navigator starting in the autumn. So it's so exciting, and, really seeing laws changed. Our chief exec, Christian Guy, was David Cameron's social justice advisor. And he's really one of the big reasons that we really have the Modern Slavery Act. And he just led the review of or one of the reviewers of that act, and gave many recommendations to the government, which they have taken. And one is to have this international envoy to really work and link governments together to get a more sort of coherent approach. So it's amazing. We've rescued nearly 5,000 women, men and children, and that's just been in the sort of first 10 years. And I'm excited. I'm committed to justice and care for the next 10 years. Like I'm so excited at what we're doing, and I really believe in our strategy, and we're all about partnership, and we're making a difference, one person at a time. But I love that it's, stories from border guards intercepting girls being taken over to India, training women, garment factory workers on the shop floors, telling them about the signs, or repatriating victims. It's, in Bangladesh or in India. We're going to see so much happening in Romania. Romania is actually a big source country for those, especially here brought over to the UK. So just seeing what we're going to do there to prevent people being trafficked is going to be amazing. So local and global. I mean, couldn't be more passionate about justice and care.
That speaks very loudly through the way you articulated that. It's funny, I want to try and get away from statistics with this thing, because I can find that we can get lost in, certainly when you find out, it was 26 million and now it's 40 million. I mean, what does that even mean? It's almost
hard to fathom, isn't it?
Yeah, it's unquantifiable, really. But what I love is the individual stories and the stories of, actually, this was a girl that was heading for a life of suffering, or this was a man that was heading for a life of suffering, and we intervened. We were part of that chain somewhere that changed someone's life forever, and rather than almost hitting the bottom of a waste paper basket, their life is now growing to do all these amazing things. I love hearing those stories. They're so inspiring, and I'd love to share some of those. So thanks for coming on. But if I was listening to this, and I imagine the people that are going to listen to this are, people that are interested in the justice world, whatever that means to them, What can I do to get more involved? What
Yeah.
would you suggest? You know, is there any advice you can give whether we can get more involved with Justice and Care or just with this issue? I've got this burning desire. I saw the film, or I had this experience, or I heard a podcast, and I want to get involved. I want to be part of that. What can I do? You
can make a difference. And the fact is, I always say we can't all do everything, but we can all do our something. So what is your something? So I love saying, look, what's in your hand? So is it food? Is it, our friend is a curry chef, so he's using curry to bring freedom. You could host a Spice for Life night, get your mates round, show a video, get them all to put some money in. Actually, the first thing I did was to give financially. And that is the holy grail for us. Those 15, 20 quids a month, £5 a month, makes such a difference to our work. Like, don't underestimate the power of that. So whether you could give to us £15 helps us train border guards in Bangladesh to be able to intercept those girls being taken over the border. So it really makes a difference. So what could you do for freedom? So like I said, is it sport? Is it time? Is it money? Is it are you in the political world? Is it what are you passionate about? What's in your hand? And use that to bring freedom. For me, it was sport. For you, it's coffee. For everyone, it's different, but just use that to bring freedom. And look at our website, justiceandcare.org. You can have a look on there, all the different ways to get involved. You can see what other people are doing to fundraise for us. We've got lots of campaigns. If you're a teacher, for instance, we've got a teacher who became so passionate about justice and care, and she donated all her sort of presents that she would have got, asked for the parents to give money instead, and raised thousands for us. And we just see young people doing so many creative things for us. So use that to bring freedom. Have a look on there. Or I hope that this has just inspired you that, don't just listen to this and let it go. I hope that it really does stir you to action, and just think creatively and use your sphere of influence. And don't underestimate even the power of social media. That was the first thing that I started doing, was sharing articles and making a noise about it. And it's incredible that, people on the other side of the world say, oh, I read about this, or read the book, or heard something, about Justice and Care or the Row, and it's inspired us to do this. So amazing. Dream it, do it. There was a vote in our race called Dream it, do it. And, so many people could dream dreams, but few people, like, you could have dreamed about blue pear, Bryn. You could have, and just thought, well, it's going to be a bit hard. And I know it's not easy. I see the, blood, sweat and tears behind the scenes for you, actually. And, but it's that passion that just keeps you going. You know that it's making a difference. And so many people fail to sort of reach their full destiny and potential when the going gets tough. But, keep going, keep rowing. Don't give up when the setbacks and challenges come. And when you make it to the other side, it's the most amazing feeling, and you are changing people's lives. Like, what could be more rewarding and satisfying?
I couldn't agree more. Julia, thank you.
Woo!
I feel so inspired. You're a superstar. I think you are a fighter. You were a fighter from your childhood to where you are now. And I love your passion. You're a beautiful spirit, and I appreciate you coming on and being our first guest.
Joy.
I'm inspired. So thank you. Let's go enjoy the rest of our day.
Woohoo!
So that was it. Podcast number 1 in the bag. I hope you enjoyed it. I have to apologise for my somewhat unfiltered explanation of what were the unfortunate consequences of eating that slightly dodgy chicken burger the night before we recorded. Bit of an overshare, wasn't it? I think I'll probably put that down to nerves. Julia was great though, wasn't she? If you want to find out more about Julia, why not read her book? Row for Freedom. It's available on Amazon and probably some other places too. That's just where I bought it. I read it, I enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it. You can also find out more about the amazing work of Justice and Care at their website, www.justiceandcare.org. You can also find them on all the usual social media platforms too. Thank you to producer Matt for putting the show together for us. Thank you to Soho Radio for the use of their facilities. If you like the show, I know it's early days and you may wish to suspend your judgment until you've experienced a little more of us. But if you feel ready, could I ask you to like, subscribe, and if you're really kind, give us a 5-star review on whichever platform you listen to us. Anything less is actually not only unhelpful but slightly offensive, and I have incredibly thin skin. This show was produced by Blue Bear Coffee Company. You can find out more about us at www.bluebearcoffee.com. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Blue Bear Coffee Co. Or you can tweet us at BlueBearCoffee1, which is odd and incongruent with the other names. And that's all we're really on. I don't do Snapchat because I don't understand it. Thanks for listening. Please hang on for another couple of weeks to listen to the next episode. See you then.